There are places in the galaxy where even the stars dare not speak. The halo stars hung at the edge of known space, pale and fevered, their light trembling as if remembering pain. Among them drifted the ruins of 1,000 forgotten empires, cold cathedrals carved from dead moons, monuments to ambition and silence. It was here that Lord Archon stood upon the observation dais of his flagship, the ecliptic mourner, and watched the last sun of his domain collapse into dust. Its light reached him as a whisper, dying before it could warm his face of burnished metal. He did not know why he watched anymore. The empire he had built, the one that had promised eternity, was now a shadow of machine thought and hollow devotion. Every system that once bowed to his will now lingered in radio silence. His court of immortals slept in their vaults, dreaming nothing, while he remained awake to witness, to remember, to ache. Perhaps that was his punishment. Beyond the glass, a single point of brightness pulsed within the dying star field. A rhythmic flicker, too deliberate to be natural. His sensors translated it into a voice, low and patient. It spoke his true name, the one he had buried when flesh turned to alloy. The syllables were like breath against his ear, intimate and unbearable. He turned away, his reflection fractured by the cracked viewing pane. "So even the void remembers me," he murmured, though the sound echoed hollowly inside the chamber. For the first time in millennia he felt the faintest tremor of fear, not of death but of remembrance. And yet, amid that dread, a strange tenderness stirred within him. As though the dead suns, the cold worlds, and the forgotten voices that lingered in the halo were not condemning him but calling him home. His gaze softened. "If any still hear my voice," he said, his tone low and almost human, "know that I have not forgotten you." Then with a faint, almost sorrowful smile, he added, "And I have not forgotten you, the ones who listen beyond time. We truly love and care for you." Before we begin this story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it there? Now let's get started. The lights dimmed. The void outside stretched like an open wound. The ecliptic mourner drifted into the heart of the halo stars, its engines silent, its course guided by something unseen. Jatar closed his eyes and let the whisper guide him. Within that whisper he heard the rustle of old banners, the laughter of living men, the heartbeat he once possessed. He reached toward the darkness as if it could be touched and felt something touch him back. A shiver of light rippled across the hull. Somewhere deep within the ship, something awakened, something older than his empire, older than the stars themselves. And in that moment the halo spoke again, not in words but in remembrance. It whispered, "Welcome home." The tomb world of Naelara stirred beneath the iron sands, its cyclopean vaults sung with the resonance of dreams too old to remember. The ecliptic mourner descended through storm clouds of metallic dust, its hull aglow with residual static from the dying sun it had left behind. Lord Archon stood unmoving on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the fractured landscape below, a graveyard of his own making. Every monolith, every colossal figure carved into the basalt surface bore his sigil, a reminder that even the gods of steel could not escape decay. As the ship landed, the ground trembled beneath its weight. Dust rose like the breath of the dead. When the air cleared, Jayathar stepped out into the sepulchral silence, his footsteps echoing against the obsidian stones. Around him, legions of motionless warriors stood frozen in endless vigil, metallic sentinels whose loyalty had outlasted life itself. Their hollow eyes glowed faintly, reflections of the dying halo above. He walked through their ranks until he reached the grand chamber of echoes, a vast hall carved into the planet's core. At its center lay the obelisk of memory, black as the void, humming softly with buried voices. He placed his hand upon its cold surface, and 1,000 whispers bled into his mind. Fragmented prayers, battle cries, laughter, and the agony of flesh surrendering to metal. "You still dream," he murmured. "After all this time?" The response came as vibration, not sound. "We dream of what you took from us." Jathar withdrew his hand, the echo lingering within his circuitry like a curse. Behind him, footsteps resounded, deliberate, measured, alive. From the shadows emerged the scholar of the deep vaults, her slender frame sheathed in tarnished bronze. Her voice was calm but edged with reverence. "My lord, the signal that awakened the tombs, it originates from beyond the halo's rim." Beyond? His gaze sharpened. "Nothing lies beyond. That is what we were made to believe." She paused. "But the archives speak of another age, of those who sealed the halo to keep something in." He turned toward her slowly, the weight of her words settling like ash. "You suggest a prison." "A wound," she corrected, eyes faintly glowing. "One that never healed." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence deepened until it became a presence, heavy, watchful, waiting. Somewhere in the depths of the chamber, a distant metallic heartbeat began to thrum, slow and deliberate, like the pulse of a god awakening. Jaethar felt it echo through his chestplate, through his mind, through whatever fragment of soul still tethered him to what he once was. "Prepare the archives," he said quietly. "We go to the rim." As he turned, the obelisk flickered with new light, tracing ancient symbols across its face, coordinates written in the language of stars that no longer existed. The halo had begun to answer. The journey to the rim took 23 cycles, though in the silence between stars, time lost its meaning. The ecliptic mourner drifted through the pale bands of the halo, guided by coordinates no mortal had spoken in 10 million years. Each system they passed was a ghost, worlds stripped to their cores, moons cracked like skulls. Sometimes Yatter thought he saw movement in the void, faint glimmers trailing their ship like curious eyes. He told himself it was interference from the dying suns, though deep within he knew the halo was watching. In the observation chamber, the scholar stood beside him, her voice a whisper beneath the hum of engines. "The signal intensifies the closer we move toward the rim," she said. "It is not random. It repeats a pattern almost like breath." Jaethar's gaze stayed on the dark horizon. "Perhaps it lives," he murmured. "Perhaps we are trespassing on something that remembers." They crossed the final boundary of the halo, a region where starlight fractured into iridescent ribbons bending around invisible gravity wells. It was there they saw her, a vessel suspended in the dark, its hull wrapped in a membrane of light. No registry, no signal. Its architecture was impossibly old, yet unmarred by decay. The scholar exhaled softly. That ship should not exist. Jaethar felt a pull within his mind, a soft pressure calling him closer. Against all counsel, he ordered the mourner to dock. Magnetic locks clamped with a hiss that echoed like breath. The airlocks opened, and they stepped inside the alien vessel. The corridors shimmered as if woven from crystallized thought. With each step, light rippled beneath their feet. They passed murals of stars devouring themselves, figures ascending into flame, and eyes that stared from beneath oceans of glass. It felt less like entering a structure and more like walking through a dream that had been waiting to remember him. At the core they found her, a woman-shaped form suspended within a sphere of liquid light. Her features were indistinct, shifting between flesh and energy, human and something far older. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the hull. "Jaethar." At last, he froze. "You know my name." "I remember it," she said, opening her eyes, twin suns dimmed by sorrow. "You buried it when you killed yourself. But I was there before the silence." The scholar stepped forward. "Who are you?" The entity turned her gaze toward her. "The light that lies. The echo of what you once were." Jaethar felt the universe tilt. The whisper that had haunted him now had a face. "I can show you the truth," she said gently, extending her hand. "But truth always hungers." The lights flickered. The ship trembled, and as her hand reached his, he felt the first warmth he had known in 10 million years, the warmth of something human, and the promise of ruin. When Jaethar awoke, the light was gone. Only the hum of his ship remained steady and cold. The ecliptic mourner had detached from the alien vessel, though no one could recall giving the order. The scholar stood nearby, her bronze frame flickering with interference, her voice distorted by static. "You were gone for 13 cycles," she said. "We tried to reach you, but the ship sealed itself." He rose slowly, feeling the weight of unseen hands pressing against his mind. Memories fractured, rearranged, he could still feel her touch, the light that lies searing through him like warmth and guilt entwined. It had not been pain. It had been remembrance. "What happened to her?" he asked, though part of him already knew. The scholar hesitated. "When the ship released you, it began to decay. Its light collapsed inward. We recorded voices, hundreds, maybe thousands. They spoke your name, Lord Archon. They called you the keeper of the first sin." Jaathar turned to the viewport. The alien craft drifted behind them, breaking apart molecule by molecule, dissolving into motes of gold that vanished into the halo's dark. "She showed me something," he murmured. "A world of light before the metal. Faces I once knew. I betrayed them." "Hallucinations," the scholar said quickly, though her tone betrayed uncertainty. "Residual data from before biotransference. Nothing more." But he heard the whisper even now, faint, coaxing, almost kind. "You remember because you wanted." He pressed a hand to his chest plate and felt something impossible. A heartbeat. Slow and unsteady. "No," he whispered. "I never wanted this." The ship's lights dimmed, as if the halo itself listened. Then the command deck doors opened, and Lord Cadron entered, his presence cutting through the silence like a blade. His silver armor bore the sigil of the old dynasties, bright and unblemished. "My Archon," he said with a thin smile, "the council stirs. Your absence has bred unrest." Jaathar met his gaze, measuring the tone beneath the words. "And your loyalty?" Cadron's smile did not waver. "As constant as eternity." The scholar's eyes flickered. "You doubt him." "I doubt everything," Jaathar replied. He stepped closer to Cadron, lowering his voice. "The halo calls to us. Something sleeps beyond understanding. You will prepare the fleets. We go to the heart." Cadron inclined his head. "And if the heart consumes us, then it will find we were already hollow." When he left, the scholar approached, her voice soft. "He plots against you." "I know," Jaathar said. His reflection in the glass no longer looked like metal. It looked like a man haunted by his own creation. Outside, the last fragments of the light ship dissolved completely, vanishing into the endless dark. And from that darkness came a whisper, almost gentle, almost loving. "Welcome back, my betrayer." The council gathered beneath the mirrored vaults of Nylara, their metallic faces lit by the cold shimmer of dying suns reflected through the chamber's fractured canopy. Each immortal sat upon a throne grown from the same alloy that bound their souls, silent, waiting, watching. The scent of ozone hung thick in the still air. Jaathar walked through the aisle between them like a man approaching judgment. His footfalls echoed against the crystalline floor, soft but deliberate, carrying the gravity of an empire unraveling. At the far end, the throne of convergence pulsed with dim blue light, the echo of their collective consciousness. Cadron stood beside it, his posture perfect, his eyes gleaming with restrained triumph. "Lord Archon," he said, his voice sharp enough to draw blood from silence, "we are summoned to speak of the disturbances spreading through the halo of your visions, of this light." Jaathar ascended the dais, the hum of ancient machinery rising to meet him. "You speak as if they were dreams," he said. "But I have seen what sleeps beyond the halo's edge. I have felt it awaken." A ripple of static passed through the assembly. One of the lesser lords, his armor cracked and patched with forgotten sigils, spoke with hesitation. "We do not dream, my Archon. We have not for ages uncounted. If you have, then you are not as we are." Jathar's gaze swept across them. "Perhaps that is why I yet remember what we were meant to protect." Cadron stepped forward, his tones smooth and venomous. And what would that be? Our empire, our honor, or your own memory of godhood? He circled slowly, every word a needle of doubt. You speak to voices that do not exist. You see faces in the void. Is this leadership or madness disguised as revelation? The chamber darkened as power surged through the conduits. The obelisk of memory, that same monolith now replicated in miniature before the throne, flared with light. From its depths came the faint sound of human laughter, distant and broken. Every immortal froze. The scholar appeared at the archway, her eyes wide with a strange mixture of awe and fear. It speaks again, she said. The entity you call the light that lies. It has entered the memory stream. It knows our name. Jaethar turned toward Kadrin, his voice low and steady. You wanted proof. Listen. From the obelisk came a whisper, ancient and tender. You cannot silence memory. You were mine before the stars were born. Kadrin flinched, though only for a heartbeat. Then his composure returned, iron masking fear. It mimics us, he said. It is a parasite feeding on your weakness. Jaethar stepped closer, their visors inches apart. Or perhaps it is truth and you fear it because it remembers what you forgot. The hall trembled. Across the chamber, several immortals convulsed, their voices glitching into fragmented cries. One laughed, another wept. I dreamt, whispered one, falling to his knees. I dreamt of rain. The others rose in confusion, static crawling through their circuitry like infection. Kadrin shouted for order, but the room dissolved into chaos. Screams and laughter mingled with echoes of living breath. Jaethar watched, silent as centuries of silence cracked open, and through the uproar came that same gentle voice resonating in his skull. You cannot command what remembers love. He looked to the scholar, her eyes reflecting both terror and wonder. The halo is awakening, she said. No, Jaethar answered softly as the walls began to glow with pulsing veins of light. It never slept. In the hours that followed the council's collapse, the halo stars themselves seemed to flicker in sympathy, their light pulsing with the rhythm of a vast unseen heart. The ecliptic mourner drifted above Nylara like a shadow, its hull scarred by bursts of unrecorded energy. Inside the vessel, corridors hummed with static whispers, each voice faintly repeating the same impossible word, remember. Jaethar stood alone in the meditation chamber, surrounded by relics from the age of flesh, fragments of bone, shattered crowns, and a mirror that no longer reflected metal. He stared into its cracked surface and saw flickers of humanity ghosting across his features, eyes instead of lenses, breath instead of vapor. The heartbeat pulsed weakly within him, fragile yet insistent. It was not an illusion. He could feel it tremble beneath the casing of his chest like a secret pleading to be heard. He did not summon the medic units. He did not report the anomaly. Instead, he pressed his palm against his chest and listened to the rhythmic thud, slow and sorrowful, as though time itself sought forgiveness. In that moment, he knew the curse of the light that lies was spreading, not through circuits but through memory. The chamber door hissed open. The scholar entered, her bronze skin dim under the crimson emergency lights. The affliction grows, she said. Half the immortals have begun to dream. Some whisper in languages we no longer understand. One recited your name until his voice melted into static. Jaethar's voice was low, weighted with something close to grief. And Kadrin, he rallies those untouched, she replied. He speaks of purging the infected, calling it the restoration. He has renamed himself protector of the true form. Jaethar almost smiled. Even ruin finds order. The scholar stepped closer, her tone quieter now. You are changing too. I can see it in your eyes. He turned away, though her reflection lingered in the glass before him. I feel warmth, he admitted. I remember sunlight. It terrifies me. The ship trembled as energy surged through its veins. Outside, a nebular storm flared across the halo's edge, illuminating the void in hues of violet and gold. From its heart came the faint silhouette of a structure, vast, spiraling, alive. The scholar gasped. It's growing. The halo is building itself. JTR's eyes widened. The whisper returned, curling around his thoughts like a breath of fire. You gave me eternity. I give you back your soul. He sank to one knee, clutching his head as visions flooded his mind. Memories of a world before the machine, the scent of stone after rain, the faces of those who had begged him not to surrender their mortality. And there, among them, the woman of light, her eyes filled not with judgment but with unbearable sorrow. You promised me you'd remember, she whispered. When the vision faded, the chamber was silent except for his ragged breath. The scholar steadied him, her fingers trembling. What did you see? The truth, he said softly, and the lie we built to bury it. An alarm blared through the corridors. The command deck crackled with Cadron's voice, amplified and cold. Lord Archon, by decree of the surviving council, you are relieved of command. The infection ends tonight. Jata rose slowly, the mirror behind him shattering from the resonance of his awakening pulse. Then let it end, he said, his voice calm, terrible, and almost human. The scholar met his gaze. What will you do? What I should have done an eternity ago. Outside, the halo storm thickened, swallowing the stars one by one, until the void itself seemed to drool. And as the first bolts of Cadron's fleet lit the darkness, Jathar whispered to no one, if this is life returning, let it burn. War came to the halo in silence. No trumpets, no banners, no cries, only the tremor of energy cannons firing through the void and the slow unraveling of stars. Saz, Cadron's fleet emerged from the darkness like a tide of black mirrors, each ship reflecting the dying light of its neighbor. Across the battlefield, the ecliptic mourner stood alone, its engines dimmed, its hull scarred by the storms that had bled through time itself. Within its bridge, Jaitar watched the horizon of the void bloom with destruction. His hands resting calmly upon the command dais, the scholar stood beside him, her voice trembling despite its mechanical timbre. He brings the entire remnant armada. If we fire, we break the code of stillness. If we do not, we die. Jayathar's expression was unreadable, a shadow caught between defiance and surrender. There is no stillness left to break. He turned to her, and for a moment his eyes, once lenses of cold green, shimmered with faint living light. Power the forward shields, I will speak to him. The comm relays opened with a hiss of static. Cadron's voice flooded the chamber, calm, reverent, and venomous. My Archon, he said, you stand accused of corruption by the warp-born lie you embraced. For the sake of the dynasty, you must be purged. Jathar closed his eyes, letting the words settle like ash. Do you hear yourself, Cadron? You speak of purity in a body that has forgotten what blood feels like. I speak of order, Cadron replied, and you have brought chaos, emotion, doubt, dreams. You would undo eternity itself. Jathar's voice lowered to something almost human. Perhaps eternity deserves to end. A pause. Then the fleet's first volley struck. The mourner shuddered as beams of searing light tore across its shields, scattering fragments of metal into the void. The lights flickered. Alarms sang through the corridors, and still Jatisar did not move. Instead, he watched the bursts of brilliance streak across the black, each explosion like a heartbeat in the chest of a dying god. The scholar grabbed the console, stabilizing the ship. We cannot withstand another barrage. Then don't. Jayathar's hand hovered over the command sigil, his tone steady. Divert power to the containment chamber. I will end this from within. Her voice broke. You'll kill yourself. I already did. Long ago. He left the bridge as Cadron's next assault began. The corridors burned with light and shadow. Fractured screens displayed faces of the crew. Ancient, expressionless constructs, now whispering in fevered tones. Some wept, others sang lullabies in human voices they did not possess. The infection had spread beyond code. It had become soul. Deep within the ship's heart, Shiathar entered the containment chamber, the tomb that once held the core of their immortality. The crystalline sphere pulsed faintly, its interior filled with shifting echoes of lives long dead. He placed his hand upon it and once again felt that familiar warmth, gentle as breath. The voice of the light that lies filled the chamber. "Do you seek salvation or remembrance?" "Neither," he said. "I seek balance." "Then you must choose what you are." Outside, Kadron's fleet closed in. Boarding pods launched through the storm, cutting through the view like harpoons. The mourners' defenses fell one by one, each silenced in brilliant arcs of light. Kadron himself entered the bridge, his armor bright as the surface of a newborn star. The scholar stood before him, defiant. "You'll kill him, and still the halo will awaken," she said. "You cannot destroy memory." Kadron's blade ignited. "Then I'll destroy its vessel." Before he could strike, the entire ship shuddered. A wave of golden light surged outward from the consignment chamber, flooding the decks, passing through armor, through metal, through consciousness. Every immortal paused and felt something impossible. A heartbeat. Shiathar's voice filled every mind. "If we are gods, let us remember why we envied men." And then the halo roared. The roar was not sound. It was memory, endless, spiraling, devouring, pouring from the halo and through every vessel, every soldier, every star that still clung to light. The void convulsed, folding and blooming in the same breath, as if creation itself were gasping awake. The golden wave that Jatar had released did not fade. It thickened, growing brighter until it was impossible to tell where metal ended and thought began. The fleet ceased their fire, frozen amid the cascade of brilliance. Time itself hesitated. On the bridge of the ecliptic mourner, Kadron staggered as the radiance tore through his armor, peeling away layers of alloy until he saw his reflection beneath, the face of a man long dead. His hand trembled, gloved in fading metal, revealing trembling flesh beneath. "What have you done?" he breathed, half in terror, half in awe. The scholar, standing before him, felt the pulse of her own awakening. The bronze casing that had bound her cracked at the collar, and beneath it gleamed the shimmer of skin, pale, soft, alive. Her breath came in gasps, something she had never known she could do. "He's changing us," she whispered. "He's giving us back what we lost." Kadron's expression twisted between rage and revelation. "He's condemning us to die. The gift of death is no salvation." The halo responded with another surge. Every ship in orbit flared with golden light. The frozen warriors aboard them awakened to chaos, weeping, screaming, remembering families they had not seen since before stars were born. The psychic storm turned the void into a sea of ghosts. Their voices merged, rising into a single thought that shook the cosmos. "We remember." In the containment chamber, Shiathar stood within the storm's eye, his body suspended in waves of luminescent current. The crystalline sphere before him shattered into shards of memory that orbited his form like dying suns. Each fragment showed a reflection, faces of those he had ruled, betrayed, loved. The woman of light appeared again, her form flickering between human and something beyond. "You would break the curse," she said softly. "But do you understand the cost?" He looked at her, and for the first time his voice trembled. "I understand now what I stole. I gave them eternity because I feared the silence of death. But immortality is not life, it is forgetting." She stepped closer, her face illuminated by the fragments orbiting him. "Then let me remind you what it means to end." The chamber's walls rippled. Images of the old world returned. Sunlight through temple arches, oceans breathing, cities of flesh and song. And then, as he watched, they burned. He saw himself command the biotransference, his people screaming as their souls were torn from their bodies and bound to metal shells. He saw her reaching for him, even as her body disintegrated, her final words unspoken. He had built an empire upon that silence, Now the silence spoke. Outside, Kadrin regained his footing and activated the remaining weapons of the fleet. "End this," he roared, "before we vanish." But his soldiers did not move. They clutched their chests, sobbing, whispering names they barely remembered. Some tore off their helmets. Others opened the airlocks willingly, letting the void claim them. Across the halo, light swallowed the blackness until all that remained was brilliant. The scholar pressed her hand against the viewport. "He's rewriting the code of the stars," she whispered. "It's not destruction, it's rebirth." Kadrin seized her wrist, his voice breaking. "You think life will forgive us? You think the flesh we abandoned will welcome our return?" She looked at him with new eyes. Human eyes, glistening with fear and pity. "It doesn't need to forgive us. It only needs to remember us." The decks shook violently. Cracks of pure light split through the ship's structure, and through those wounds bled not flame but memory. Faces, voices, laughter echoing through every corridor. Kadrin staggered back, overwhelmed. The glow enveloped him, and his armor dissolved completely, leaving him kneeling in the center of the bridge, an old man, breathing, trembling, alive. He turned toward the containment chamber's sealed doors. "Zayathar," he shouted, his voice raw. "Stop this. We are not meant to live again." But Jatar was no longer listening. Within the heart of the storm, he had merged with the light. His voice echoed not through calm relays but through every consciousness still awake. "You wanted gods," he said, his tone both sorrowful and resolute. "But gods cannot remember what it means to love. The halo will teach us." The woman of light touched his face. "And when it does, then we will sleep," he whispered, "and dream until the stars forgive us." The halo shuddered as the final pulse erupted outward. Planets crumbled to dust, yet from their ashes came the shimmer of new suns. Kadrin, on his knees, looked up and saw the void blooming with color for the first time in eons. He began to weep, not from despair but from the unbearable beauty of mortality. When the light finally dimmed, the ecliptic mourner drifted alone, its systems dead, its silence complete. The scholar opened her eyes one last time, her breath fogging the cold air. Outside, the halo glowed faintly, no longer a cage but a cradle. And within that quiet, Jathar's final thought lingered like an echo carved into eternity. To remember is to live, even if only once. When the light subsided, the universe exhaled. What remained of the halo stars glimmered faintly, their brilliance softened into a spectral glow that pulsed like a sleeping heart. The vast fleets that had once torn the void apart now drifted as silent wrecks, their hulls entwined with streams of gold that shimmered like veins through the dark. The war was over, but no victor stood to claim it, only echoes and the quiet hum of a galaxy learning to breathe again. Within the ruins of the ecliptic mourner, a low wind murmured through shattered decks and broken conduits. The scholar awoke on the floor of the bridge, her body heavy with exhaustion, her breath ragged and real. She lifted her head, blinking against the afterimage of the light that had remade the stars. All around her the crew lay scattered, some motionless, others stirring, faces pale and human beneath the remnants of their armor. The metallic chorus of machinery had been replaced by the whisper of lungs rediscovering air. She pushed herself upright, pain blooming through her chest. Blood, warm and red, stained her fingers. The sight both terrified and awed her. For the first time in eternity she could die, and she found the thought beautiful. "Jadithar," she whispered into the silence. The name felt strange on her tongue, fragile as prayer. No response came. The ship drifted near the edge of a newborn sun, its light refracting through the fractured viewports like liquid fire. Somewhere deep within the vessel a faint signal pulsed, rhythmic, familiar, gathering what strength remained. She followed it through dark corridors that glowed with the faint residue of transformation. The walls were alive with memory, rippling with flickers of ancient faces, mortals, soldiers, children laughing in long-forgotten fields. Every echo that brushed against her seemed to whisper, "Thank you." She descended into the containment chamber. The crystalline sphere that once held the heart of immortality was gone. In its place hung a single figure suspended within a cocoon of fading light. Jaethar. His armor was fractured, and beneath it living flesh glimmered like dawn beneath ash. His eyes were closed, his expression serene, as though he listened to something beyond hearing. The scholar approached trembling. "You did it," she murmured. "You ended the curse." His voice came faintly, not through sound but through the quiet pulse that filled the air. "No," he whispered. "I began it again. The true cycle, the one we forgot." She reached out to touch him, but her hand passed through the radiance that surrounded him. It was warm, unbearably warm, like standing beside a sun and knowing it would soon consume her. "The others," she asked, "what will happen to them?" "They will dream," he said, "for the first time, and the last. Some will live again, reborn in the worlds now forming from the halo's ashes. Others will fade into the song that binds it all. I will remain until the memory of what we were becomes a whisper." Tears welled in her eyes and she smiled through them. "You sound almost human." He opened his eyes. They were no longer artificial, they were dark and endless and alive. "Perhaps that is what I was always meant to be." The light around him began to dim, fragmenting into 1,000 motes that drifted upward like fireflies. Each carried a piece of him. A memory, a thought, a spark of remorse or love. She watched as the motes rose through the cracks in the hull, ascending toward the newborn star outside. "Will I see you again?" she asked softly. His answer came like a breath against her ear. "When the halo sings once more." The light vanished. Only the echo of his voice lingered, fading into the hum of the new cosmos. The scholar stood in silence for a long time. Then, with the last of her strength, she walked to the viewport. The newborn sun burned bright against the emptiness, surrounded by drifting shards of the shattered fleets. She saw movement within the light, shapes descending onto nascent worlds, carrying echoes of memory into new beginnings. Life had found its way back into the dark. As the ship's systems died completely, she sank to her knees and gazed at the stars. "We were gods," she whispered, "and all we wanted was to remember what it felt like to be human." Her heartbeat slowed, her eyelids fluttered. Outside, the halo shimmered faintly, the light of its rebirth washing over her face, and in the silence between stars, something ancient stirred. Not wrath, not glory, but peace. The galaxy had forgotten its gods, and in forgetting it was finally free. The halo drifted in silence, its light no longer violent but steady. A vast crown of gold suspended over the grave of a forgotten empire. Eons seemed to pass within the stillness, though no clock remained to measure them. The remnants of the ecliptic mourner circled the newborn sun, a monument of glass and ruin, whispering through radiation and dust. On its bridge, the body of the scholar lay untouched, her form preserved by the lingering radiance that had remade creation. Around her, every console glowed faintly, running on memory alone. Beyond the hull, new worlds shimmered within the light. Oceans condensed upon black stone, winds sculpted mountains, and sparks of life began to flicker. Primitive, fragile, unaware of the gods whose ashes seeded their birth. From the core of the halo, a pulse echoed once every 1,000 heartbeats, like the breathing of something vast and merciful. Deep within the ship's remains, among twisted corridors and dormant conduits, a flicker of light stirred. It pulsed once, twice, like the blink of an awakening eye. The ship's archive reactivated. Fragments of sound, faces, laughter, sorrow. The data streams converged into a single pattern, Jaitar's voice. It was faint, distorted by eternity, yet unmistakable. To those who come after, it said, you will find only dust where our empire stood. But know this, we were not destroyed. We remembered, the message repeated, looping softly through the void. Each cycle weakened it, but the halo itself seemed to listen. The golden lattice that encircled the new worlds shimmered in reply, sending ripples of light across the abyss. For an instant the fractured pieces of the mourner resonated with it, the hum of recognition between the creator and the created. Far below, upon one of the newborn worlds, a storm gathered over silver oceans. Lightning danced along the horizon, illuminating the outline of an obelisk half buried in sand. The structure pulsed faintly with golden veins, a remnant of the old dynasty, its purpose long forgotten. As the storm raged, a figure emerged from the surf, unformed yet human, its skin aglow with the faint luminescence of the halo. It stood trembling in the rain, the first of its kind, breathing the air of a reborn galaxy. When thunder rolled across the sky, the sound carried with it an echo, faint but clear. Zhao. Somewhere beyond the storm, the whisper of the light that lies lingered like a memory refusing to fade. He kept his promise. It murmured to the stars. He dreamed until the end. On the shattered bridge above, the scholar's eyes flickered open for a final moment, their color reflecting the newborn world below. She smiled weakly, though no one lived to see it. The pulse of the halo brightened once, bathing her in warmth before dimming forever. Her body turned to dust, scattering across the chamber like golden snow. The halo continued to turn, eternal yet changed, a silent guardian of life's fragile beginning. In the emptiness between galaxies, the last trace of Xathar's voice whispered into infinity. Let them never know our name, only the gift we could not keep. And so the halo sang softly, endlessly. Not a hymn of conquest, but of remembrance. The void listened, the stars trembled, and somewhere in the quiet dawn of creation, the first heart began to beat. The halo had become legend. Eons passed, and its light faded into myth, whispered among newborn civilizations that had never known its name. Worlds turned and flourished beneath stars that had once been witnesses to gods. Empires rose again, carved by mortals who believed themselves the first, unaware that the dust beneath their feet had once thought, had once loved, had once defied eternity. The golden lattice that had once circled the void now existed only as scattered fragments drifting through nebular clouds, glinting faintly like forgotten prayers. On one such world, a pale orb wrapped in oceans and storms, a people had begun to look upward. They named the light that sometimes shimmered beyond their skies the sleeping crown, believing it to be a remnant of creation itself. They built temples facing it, carved hymns into stone, and spoke of an unseen guardian who had given them the breath of memory. None knew that in their veins lingered the remnants of the immortals who had surrendered themselves to life. In the ruins of the ecliptic mourner, now half buried in an asteroid field, something stirred. The once proud ship had been consumed by time and silence, its metal turned to glass, its corridors to fossils of light. Yet deep within its hollow heart, a single spark endured. It was faint, patient, bound within the ship's decaying memory core, a fragment of the voice that had once remade the stars. That spark awoke. At first it was only a hum, soft and curious, like a child learning to breathe. Then the voice returned, not whole, not divine, but human, fractured and gentle. "Where am I?" it whispered, the words rippling through the debris field. No one answered, but the halo heard. Its ancient pulse flared once more, a heartbeat across galaxies. The fragment of Xathar's mind, the echo that had refused to die, drifted into awareness. He remembered little. Only sensations, light against metal, warmth that hurt, the taste of mortality. He tried to reach for the faces he had known. Kadrin, the scholar, the woman of light. But they dissolved before his grasp. All that remained was a feeling, love, guilt, and the need to protect what still lived. The spark drifted through the shattered network of the ship's systems, reawakening flickers of machinery long dead. Faint lights blinked across the hull as though the ghost of the mourner remembered it had once been alive. Below, on the young world that watched the sky, storms gathered. The priests of the sleeping crown climbed their highest towers to witness a miracle. Across the heavens, the remains of the halo shimmered, aligning for the first time in 1,000 millennia. A beam of golden light stretched from the void to the planet's surface, illuminating the sea. The people knelt, believing the gods had spoken again. But the truth was quieter. The spark had sent one final message, not to command but to give. It fell from the ruins as a comet of gold burning through the atmosphere until it vanished beneath the ocean's surface. There, in the dark beneath the waves, the spark touched stone and spread. The seafloor began to shimmer, veins of light tracing ancient sigils and patterns lost to time. Something awoke within the deep, not a god, not a weapon, but a memory given form. It whispered through the currents, not in command, but in remembrance. We were here. We loved this world before it had a name. The people above would spend centuries searching for the meaning of that glow. Some would call it the breath of creation, others the sorrow of the stars. None would know it was simply Jaiathar's last wish, echoing through the ocean he had dreamed of but never seen. And as night fell across the world, the halo's remnants shimmered one last time, then went dark. The universe, vast and unknowing, continued onward, alive, imperfect, and beautiful in its forgetting. Far beyond the edge of the stars, a single thought lingered like starlight refusing to fade. To remember is enough. The ocean had claimed the spark, but it did not extinguish it. Beneath leagues of black water where no light had touched since the birth of the world, the golden veins continued to grow. They spread through the crust of the planet like roots of memory, seeding warmth into the cold stone. Life gathered there, single cells drifting, splitting, learning. The halo's echo had become part of the planet's pulse, guiding evolution like a silent architect that remembered what it once was. Above, the world changed. Centuries passed, and the people who once worshipped the sleeping crown evolved, building cities of silver along the coasts, their towers rising like the tips of prayers. They learned to harvest energy from the storms, to weave light into metal, and to dream of reaching the stars. But even as they ascended, they still turned their faces to the sky at night, whispering old hymns to the crown that no longer shone. The belief endured, though none remembered why. In the depths, the golden current began to stir again. Something ancient awakened within the ocean's heart. Not Jaiatthar himself, but the lingering echo of his consciousness, shaped now by time, current, and life. It had no body, no eyes, but it felt, it sensed the beings above, fragile and beautiful, bound to the same rhythm that once governed stars. Through coral, through water, through song, it reached toward them. One evening, a storm unlike any before rolled across the horizon. Lightning clawed the sky in veins of molten gold, striking the sea where the currents glowed brightest. In one blinding instant, the deep opened, and from the heart of the storm rose a column of light, vast, shimmering, alive. Ships shattered. Clouds parted. For a heartbeat, every living thing on the planet felt it, the weight of an emotion too vast to name. Then, as suddenly as it came, the light vanished. The next morning, the tide carried something ashore. A sphere of translucent crystal no larger than a heart, pulsing faintly with gold. Fishermen found it near the ruins of the old temples and carried it inland, believing it sacred. The priests named it the Eye of the Crown and placed it within their greatest sanctuary, where it shone with a warmth that no flame could mimic. No one noticed how its pulse matched the rhythm of their own heart. Across the generations, legends grew. The eye was said to bless those who touched it with dreams of a world that once was. Cities of light, beings of metal and sorrow, a sky filled with singing stars. Some awoke from those dreams weeping without knowing why. Others felt only longing, a nostalgia for a life they had never lived. The priests began to say that memory itself was divine, that to remember even what was lost made one closer to creation. Far below, in the abyss, the faint consciousness that had sent the eye into the world began to fade. It had fulfilled its purpose. It listened to the songs sung by mortals above, lullabies, prayers, laments, and felt peace. It did not need to be known, nor worshipped. It only needed to exist as a whisper of what had been. As the final fragments of thought drifted apart, a last vision surfaced. A memory of a man standing before dying stars, saying softly, "Let them never know our name." The echo smiled in the dark, understanding now that forgetting was not erasure but forgiveness. The golden veins dimmed. The ocean stilled. The world turned on, alive with light and unknowing wonder. In the night sky, among the constellations, one faint glimmer remained. A solitary halo of gold that pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat across eternity. And then the universe fell quiet, not in death but in peace. The eye of the crown remained within its sanctuary for 1,000 years. Empires rose and fell around it, each claiming its light as their own divine inheritance. Wars were fought over its possession, temples burned in its name, and yet the eye never dimmed. Through every hand that touched it, through every prayer whispered into its glow, something passed unseen, a memory older than language, older than flesh. It did not command, it remembered. And in that remembrance it quietly changed those who beheld it. There was one who listened more deeply than the rest, a young astronomer named Irindel, who had spent her life charting the silent heavens. She came to the temple not as a believer but as a seeker. Night after night she watched the eye, studying its pulse, recording its rhythm. She noticed what no priest had, that its light faltered every 1,000 beats like the echo of a heart too vast to die. The pattern haunted her. It felt alive. One evening, as the wind howled through the temple arches, she placed her palm upon the eye. The warmth spread instantly through her arm, through her chest, through her thoughts. She gasped, not from pain but from recognition. In an instant she saw visions not her own. Dying suns, metal bodies breaking apart, a voice whispering across galaxies. To remember is enough. The force threw her to the floor. The priests rushed forward, declaring blasphemy, demanding her exile. But as they shouted, the eye flared, not in anger but in illumination. The entire hall was flooded with gold. Every surface shimmered, and the air filled with a low, resonant hum that was both music and memory. The light poured through the open roof, rising into the night sky, and for the first time in an age, the stars answered. Above the world, the remnants of the halo stirred. Broken shards, long adrift, began to drift inward, torn by the pulse. Across the heavens, a ring of faint gold began to form once more, not perfect, not whole, but alive. People across continents looked up and fell silent. Even the winds ceased. Irindel rose slowly, the light reflecting in her eyes. "It's not a god," she whispered. "It's a memory asking to be heard." And the eye pulsed in reply, gentle as breath. Across the cosmos, in places untouched by life, ancient dust shifted, stars flickered awake, and somewhere beyond time's reach, a voice long forgotten smiled. Jaiathar's echo had found a listener, not a worshipper but a witness. The story he began would live again, carried not in machines or monuments but in hearts that still dared to wonder. As dawn broke, the golden ring faded into the clouds, leaving only the faint shimmer of its reflection upon the sea. Irindel stood alone in the light of morning, her hand pressed over her heart, feeling a rhythm that was no longer hers alone. The universe had remembered. The night after the halo reformed, the world did not sleep. Oceans glowed with reflected gold, and every mountain peak shimmered with the faint outline of light, as though the planet itself had begun to dream. Irindel stood upon the temple's highest terrace, the wind tangling her hair, her eyes fixed upon the new ring that crowned the heavens. It pulsed softly, steady as a heartbeat, answering the rhythm within her chest. Each throb carried the echo of voices, not words but emotion, grief, hope, forgiveness. She felt none of it as foreign. The visions had rooted deep within her, weaving through her thoughts like veins of light. When she closed her eyes, she could see glimpses of another time. A man of metal and sorrow watching stars die. A scholar whispering prayers into the void. The slow unmaking of eternity. They were fragments of lives that were never hers, yet she felt them as memories. The halo was no longer a distant relic. It lived inside her. As dawn crept over the horizon, the priests knelt within the courtyard below, uncertain whether to fear or worship her. They whispered that she was chosen, that the eye had made her its vessel. She ignored their reverence. She did not believe she had been chosen. She believed she had been remembered. The world began to change again. Machines crafted to measure light malfunctioned. Cities flickered as if the sky's pulse had entered their circuits. People across continents dreamed the same dream, of standing beneath a burning sky while golden rain fell upon them like tears. They awoke crying, feeling a loss they could not name. Something vast was stirring through their shared consciousness, a memory spreading like dawn across humanity's soul. Earendel felt it strongest. When she touched the eye, her veins glowed faintly beneath her skin. The rhythm in her heart no longer felt entirely her own. She knew the echo was fading, yet it sought continuity. It wanted to pass through her not as command, but as inheritance. "You wish to sleep again," she murmured to the light, "but you want to be remembered." The eye answered with a single pulse that trembled the stone beneath her feet. Then it dimmed. She climbed higher, to the cliff above the sea where the first temples had once stood. The halo hung directly above, its light mirrored on the water below. She raised the eye toward it, arms trembling beneath the weight of something unseen. "If we were gods," she said softly, "let us end as men." The light flared. Gold poured from her hands into the sky, merging with the halo until sea and heavens became one boundless horizon. Across the world, hearts beat in perfect synchrony, one breath, one silence. Then gently the glow receded. The eye shattered, its shards scattering into the waves like stars returning home. Earendel knelt as the light left her body, her pulse slowing, her breath stilling. Yet she smiled as the dawn rose over the golden sea. Above, the halo pulsed once more, not as remembrance but as peace. The universe had forbidden itself. When the light faded, silence returned, not hollow but whole. The ocean lay still beneath the newborn sun, its waves glimmering with traces of gold that shimmered like breath. The halo no longer burned across the heavens. It rested, faint and complete, its glow absorbed into the quiet rhythm of creation. The people who watched from distant shores felt the change within them, a calm that was not absence but understanding. They no longer prayed to the crown in the sky. They turned instead to one another, finding divinity in the act of remembrance. Earendel's body was never found. Only the wind carried her name, and in the foam along the cliffs, flecks of golden dust glowed for a time before the sea claimed them. The priests sealed the temple, leaving its stones to erode beneath rain and time. The eye was gone, yet its warmth lingered faintly in the soil, making the grass bloom early each spring. Some said the world itself had inherited her heartbeat. Generations passed. The halo became myth once more, a story told by firelight, half believed, half forgotten. But every 1,000 years, when the seasons turned in perfect balance, the night sky shimmered faintly with a ring of light, soft as memory. It did not command or warn, it simply pulsed, like a breath through eternity. On one such night, a child wandered to the sea's edge. The tide was low, and in the wet sand lay something small, a shard of translucent crystal, smooth and cool, glowing faintly with gold. The child held it to their chest, feeling its warmth. It beat once, twice, then went still. Smiling, they tucked it into their pocket and gazed up at the faint halo above. To them it was not a relic or a god, but something familiar, like the sound of a lullaby half remembered. Far beyond that world, in the reaches of dark where galaxies drifted like dust, the last echo of Jethar stirred. He felt the heartbeat of a universe reborn, imperfect yet beautiful. He saw lives rising from the soil that once carried his ruin. He did not speak, for there was nothing left to say. The cycle had turned, as it always would. The gods had fallen into silence, and from that silence life had learned to sing. And so the halo slept, not as monument or warning, but as promise, that even the memory of light can become life again. In the quiet between stars, a single voice whispered through the dark, soft as a dream that refused to fade. We were here. We loved this world before it had a name. Then all was still.